Well, we have reached the end of the regular season, Week 17. It's hard to believe we're already here. Brendan Glasheen, Adam Kaufman, and it's good to be with you. We got a whole lot on the docket today, too.
Yeah, big day of games. 15 games from the 1 o'clock to the 4 o'clock games, only one night game. As Adam said, we'd like to hear from you folks as well. We're going to do a lot of talking. We have some DraftKings contributors joining us today. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them, and we'll get to them at some point during the program.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole lot going on here, obviously, over the course of the next hour and a half. We appreciate you joining us. We're going to bring in a wide assortment of contributors over the course of the program. Reed Fowler and Jeff Ulrich going to start us off here. Guys, welcome in. It's good to see you. Jeff, be ready.
Ready? Let's go.
Good. All right. Please, take it away.
Okay. Fellas, let's get into this thing. We're going to start with the real barn burner of the afternoon, Jets and Bills. Buffalo's already locked into the 5 seed, so virtually nothing to play for. And the New York Jets, they're already locked into mediocrity. So can the Jets end the year on a high note and win as a 1-point dog? Reed.
No, they can't. I like your jokes, Glasheen. You're feeling a little feisty in your first time hosting this show.
Oh, nice. Way to get that in there.
I love it.
1 minute in.
I'm sure Ulrich's going to have something to say about that. But no, if you look at mediocrity, what we talk about, it's the Jets. That's what they epitomize mediocrity. Yes, they've had some spots where they've played well, but even though the Bills, who are resting their starters, we don't exactly know officially that that's the case. The Bills, second string, third string, I like these guys a lot more than the Jets. The Jets, their players don't even want to play for the Jets anymore, so give me the Bills here.
All those game lines behind Reed make him look really smarter than he actually is, right, Jeff? You've got the knowledge, you got the coffee in you now. How do you feel about the Jets?
I agree. The set is just set up to make Reed look smart. It's unfair. This game is whatever. It's going to be a slow-paced game. I think both these teams are just going to try and get out of the building as fast as they can. The Jets have made a big rah-rah, oh, we're going in there, this is our Super Bowl. I don't really believe it either. I mean, they have not been good on the road all season. Sam Darnold has had poor road numbers. I think even with Matt Barkley at quarterback, I like the Bills in this spot. They have some decent backup running backs. I think they're just going to try and deflate the ball anyways. I'm looking for a close game, but I'd still take the Bills at home here.
Remember, as usual, on these Sunday programs, we want to hear from you. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever it may be, get your questions in. DFS contest, Sportsbook, whatever it is. Of course, special treat for you on Facebook as well. All kinds of different things that you can look for, polls and questions, a chance for your comments to appear on the show. So get all those in over the course of the program. We'll get to as many as we can. But continuing, obviously, with you guys, Reed, are there any things here, any of these guys that are worth locking into for daily fantasy with this game? The Jets, maybe Sam Darnold, these 5K, is that even worth considering here?
No. Stay away from the Jets. If we had any sort of timeline on how many plays or any sort of snap count, how many times that Josh Allen, John Brown, these guys are going to play, I like that little stack if you want to go DFS, but we just don't, or if you want to go GPPs, excuse me. But we just don't know how many plays that these guys are going to run. So I would just stay from this game entirely.
Jeff, you agree?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much have to agree. Like I said off the top, this has one of the smallest point totals we've seen almost all season, or sitting around 36 and a half. It's just not going to be a fun game to watch. I mean, if you want to take a shot on a player, I'd probably go on the Jets side and hope a guy like Jamison Crowder maybe just takes advantage of a backup cornerback at some point in this game, or just gets a volume pop-off with 12 or 14 targets, which could happen. I mean, again, if he gets the right matchup. But it's not really a place I'm leaning towards much, other than maybe, like I said, maybe a Crowder dart throw. You can just stay away from this game.
To your point, Jeff, just continuing with that under at 36.5, as you mentioned, is the under realistic here?
It's absolutely realistic. I mean, look, Buffalo is 4-11, going hitting the over here on the entire season. So the Jets are traditionally under Gase, obviously a bottom 10 teams in terms of pace played. I mentioned Sam Darnold's road stats. Like, everything here is actually pointing towards the under. And again, if Buffalo is going to play their backups, it doesn't mean they're going to switch to like this high pace, all of a sudden like rushing offense, right? Where they're popping off more plays. It's just going to get slower. They're probably just going to get more conservative. So I actually like the under, even at 36.
Reed, would you be contrarian, swing the other way?
No.
Hold on. Nope.
No, I mean, just to reiterate what Jeff was saying, like the Jets on the road score the 9th lowest touchdowns at 2 per game. That's not going to happen. Give me the under.
All All right, let's go to Chargers-Chiefs. This one's meaningful for Kansas City because it can still slide a little in seeding, and also the fact their defense is playing better. So you think KC here, Jeff, will be motivated enough to cover the 9.5 points?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't worry about a motivation issue at all with Kansas City. I mean, look, they are playing essentially at the same time, right, as the Patriots here. So Andy Reid has approached this game like it's just a regular game. Obviously, it's a game they need to even have a shot at the number 1 seed. So I'm not worried about Kansas City starting to take out players. I mean, the only thing I'd worried about, and this is more from fantasy, is if they do get up big, they might start resting players. But I think from a spread perspective, all respect or trust I had in the Chargers went out the window last week when they lost by over touchdown at home to the Raiders in the game where they were favored by a touchdown. Look, I get that, this Melvin Gordon, Phillip Rivers, and maybe it's their last game as a Charger. They could have got up for a home game for that same reason last week. That's no reason here for me to get on the Chargers. I would probably take the Chiefs even up to 10-point favorites, to be honest. They've been a very solid team against the spread, 10-5 this year. I like the way their defense is played. They have the better defense in this game, too. I think people are still overrating the Chargers' defense. So 9.5 still, I'd take the Chiefs.
Reed, the viewers have weighed in. 73% say the Chiefs will no question cover. I think the question here is there enough motivation for the Chargers to even show up in this game?
No. I mean, again, I don't want to be repetitive, but look. It's this division is always tough, especially the Chargers are very tough to figure out because they win these games that they're not supposed to, and they lose the games that they're not supposed to. In this specific matchup, you have a motivated Kansas City team who have most of their players healthy. The Damian Williamses are back. You have Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes obviously getting healthier as the season progresses. This is absolutely a spot where I would be totally on Kansas City as opposed to the Chargers. And aside from showing what Melvin Gordon has, maybe some spots like Austin Eckler is a GPP play, but in this spread, no, give me Kansas City.
All right, total for this one is 45. So do you like the over or the under, Reed? And it's not a yes or no question for you.
Yeah, the under here. The Chargers routinely a slow-paced team. If you just look at this division, they're not good at covering or hitting the over. They're 2-3. And if you look at Kansas City, they're not good at hitting the over as well. They're 0-5 in this division, hitting that over number. So both of these teams, now give me the under.
All right, so Jeff, sounds like the numbers would favor the under here.
Yeah, it does. I mean, this kind of sets up similar in matchup perspective as to what we saw Kansas City going up against the Bears, where their defense was actually pretty dominant against a bad offense. It's a very similar setup, in my opinion. The Chargers can't move the ball properly. They have quarterback issues. They're not really running the ball. Kansas City's defense has been good. And again, when their defense is able to just limit the teams, their high-flying offense doesn't really have to do much. So I'm looking for a similar game script to last week for Kansas City. And yeah, I think 45.5, I would take the under here too.
Reed, my beloved Patriots can clinch a first-round bye with a win against the Dolphins, who have played much better in fairness these last couple months. They're 4-4. So that in mind, spread is huge, 16.5 in Foxborough. Is that too high for the Pats?
I want to say it is, just to give you and Glasheen there a nice jab to the side, but it's not. It's not too high. Look at the Patriots, especially at home. You would think that their numbers ATS in December are favorable, but 2-5-1 over the last 8 games in December covering. But when you look at the division, when you look at Tom Brady and what these guys have to do, and looking at the inefficiencies on the Miami side, it's in the run game. You like that run game. You like them to come up. And Miami 0-7 ATS in the last 7 matchups in New England. Give me your beloved Patriots there, Goff.
Jeff, 16.5 sounds like nothing when you consider it was 43-0 when these two teams matched up earlier in the year. But these are two very different teams at this stage than they were early in the season as well. So what do you think here?
Yeah, they are. I mean, the Patriots have obviously hit some peaks and valleys, but I do feel like they might be on the way back up again. Their offense looked much more capable against a very good Buffalo defense last week. So I think you like that coming in. Don't love the Julian Edelman news, but look, they have Sanu there, N'Keal Harry. So, look, the problem with Miami here is they've been moving the ball with Devontae Parker and Ryan Fitzpatrick. Devontae Parker is going to get Stephen Gilmore today. It's just a terrible matchup. And then you have a really good New England pass rush going up against a bad offensive line. The Miami pass rush is basically non-existent. It's worse in terms of adjusted sack rate in the league. Brady's going to have time to do kind of whatever he wants, get the balls to the running back in space. Just give me the Patriots here. I'm not really sure why people are so confident in Miami because they are actually getting bet up a bit, but I like the Patriots.
You know, there might be some concerns, Adam, about Tom Brady's elbow. He was this morning writing with his left hand. I'm not sure if you saw, but
I didn't.
He's just fine for this one, left off the injury report. Total is set at 44.5. And Jeff, you mentioned the Julian Edelman news. So looking at the Patriots offense more so, do you see these two teams going over that mark?
Again, like I think if they get over this mark, New England is probably going to have to score over 30 points. I would kind of lean towards the over here. I really do like the way the New England offense looked last week. And, you know, for all the failings of Miami, their offense has been a little bit better, obviously, over the last few weeks. So even if Devontae Parker can't get going, they could see the ball get to Albert Wilson a little bit, or Myles Gaskin could get going just in garbage time. So I'm going to take the over here. It's not really a total I'm looking to play, but all things considered, I think with the possibility that and how well the New England defense is beat up on weaker offenses and you know, pick sixes and stuff like that, I'll take the over.
Reed, you saw him go to the stadium this morning. What do you think of Brady and the Patriots
You do
hitting that
know
over?
you're not Tom Brady, right?
No, he doesn't. He really,
I'm not sure what you're talking
really doesn't. Jeff, you had a layup there. Glasheen just gave you an absolute lob, and you just walked
Just
right
ignored
over
it.
He just didn't see him walk in.
It's week 17. A lot of us are asleep still. I mean, come on. No, like the over is in play. Both of these teams fast paced. Ryan Fitzpatrick, what you like is these guys are going to keep on throwing. You like potentially a defensive touchdown. We'll get to that in a little bit in terms of the Pats D. Yes, give me the over.
It's a real identity crisis going on. It's unbelievable.
Jeff, the Packers take on the Lions. Again, not sure what you guys are talking about. Green Bay can clinch a first-round bye, so there's a lot on the line. Can the Pack win big enough to cover 11 points?
No, I don't think they can. I like Detroit in this matchup. There's a few reasons why. One is mainly I like the fact Kerryon Johnson is back. He's scheduled for a little bit of a bigger workload here for Detroit, and I think that's going to take some pressure off of David Blau. They can also attack the weakest point in the Green Bay defense, which is their rush defense. So I think that's good for Detroit. Got a little bit of narrative things going on, too. It could just pump up Detroit a little bit. But again, divisional matchup at home. And look, it really comes down to this. I don't really believe the Packers are an elite team. They've played bad teams very, very close, like Carolina, Washington over the last month or so. They didn't really beat up on the Vikings, even though Minnesota played possibly the worst game of their year last week. So I like Detroit here for over 10 points to cover. I think they're going to cover.
Reed, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go on the other side and bet Green Bay at this number, look, they're on a winning streak, and if you look at the five or last six they've covered in those games, Detroit is a bad team. They don't have any healthy players, as opposed, you know, you mentioned Kerryon Johnson, some of these guys, but really, there's nothing on the offensive side that you like, and just defensively, they've been a sieve, especially against the run. So maybe Green Bay just plays into that, but it's hard to trust Green Bay covering at this number. So I'm with Detroit as well.
Over-under for this one's 43.5, so for it to get there, probably going to need another big game out of Aaron Jones. Now, last weekend in Minnesota, he was huge, Reed, so 8,200 in this one. Do you think he can respond, come up big again?
Yeah, I think he's a nice GPP play. When you look at the other top, he's priced right by Zeke and Kamara and these guys, and so if you want to swerve off of those guys, which I don't necessarily advise, I think if you look at the top three guys, it's Christian McCaffrey, Zeke, and Alvin Kamara. Just with Jones, right? You just don't know. If Green Bay is up a lot, he might be sitting. So you can't trust him in cash, maybe GPPs.
Jeff, how do you feel?
Yeah, kind of similar. Definitely doesn't not a cash game lock or anything. There's players under him in salary. I much prefer, Kenyan Drake, even Joe Mixon probably. But Aaron Jones definitely in play for GPPs. Look, I mean, Green Bay is still favored here by over 10 points. The Lions have been pretty much terrible all season in defending against opposing running backs, especially for fantasy purposes. If Green Bay is up big, like Reed alluded to, I mean, it's probably because Aaron Jones got in the end zone a couple times, because their passing offense really has not been clicking over the last few games. We saw how pathetic it was against a pretty weak Minnesota secondary last week. So Aaron Jones definitely in play here for like a ceiling type game, but he's more GPP only for sure.
We're off to a great start here. We have a ton more on the way, including our Sportsbook panel. They're standing by after we hear from Adam Levitan, his top picks for today's slate.
It's time for the Week 17 edition of Levitan's Leverage. He's Adam Levitan. I'm Taryn Azak. A lot of tough choices for fantasy players to make in Week 17. Who starts? Who sits? Who will be held back in the final week of the regular season? Adam, you are here to help us out with that. You're rolling with Ezekiel Elliott this week in the Cowboys' must-win matchup against the Redskins. Is that the biggest factor in your decision to start Zeke?
Yeah, I mean, Cowboys are still alive to make the playoffs if they win and the Eagles lose, which is certainly possible. Cowboys are in, and in these kind of games at home against the Redskins team, which allows so many touchdowns, which allows so many rushing scores in the red zone, it just sets up so well for Ezekiel Elliott. And I think one of the big things that with Zeke this week is, whereas a lot of other guys are priced up into the 9K range, Zeke's kind of lackluster season has left him down at 8K, and I think that's very, very cheap.
The Saints have something to play for as they are looking for that first-round bye. They take on Carolina, who's been horrible against opposing running backs this season. So naturally, you love Alvin Kamara here, right?
Yeah, I mean, Alvin Kamara's usage has been fine all year. The touchdowns have not been there. That began to regress last week when he was finally able to find the end zone. And yes, Saints are extremely motivated in this game. And Alvin Kamara is going to catch between 4 or 6 passes, and he's going to get between 10 and 15 carries. And that kind of floor is really, really hard to find in a full PPR format like DraftKings. So I think this sets up pretty nicely for Kamara to have really good rushing efficiency as well as scoring equity.
And last one, you're going back to the well with the Cowboys, and this time it's a receiver. You like Michael Gallup in this matchup against Washington over Amari Cooper. Why is that?
Yeah, we saw last week, late in the game, their biggest game of the year, and Amari Cooper ends up getting benched, getting rotated out in favor of Tavon Austin, and that really surprised me, man, and that scared me. The guy who isn't rotating out, the guy who Dak Prescott is looking for, is Michael Gallup, who continues to play really, really well. Also match up against an already bad Redskins secondary, which is now banged up also. So you get some savings on Michael Gallup, and I think you just get a safer player at this point.
All right, that will do it for the final regular season edition of Levitan's Leverage. We'll see you in the playoffs, Levy.
All right, thank you.
And welcome back. Brendan Glasheen here with you. Sweat is rolling on. We're going to welcome in our Sportsbook panel now. Hal Tendler, Sportsbook Manager at Resorts Atlantic City. Nicole Beauvais, Sportsbook Manager at Del Lago. And Andy Crone, Sportsbook Supervisor at Wild Rose Resorts. Great to see you all. Thanks for the time. It's week 17. We can't believe it either. So season's winding down. This is Hitting the Books, where we're getting an inside look at what's going on at DK Sportsbooks around the country. Hal, we'll go to you first. Which teams are showing the most action in AC this weekend?
For some reason, a lot of money going on in the Colts right now. The Eagles play later. They're the home team, but that'll be a little later at 4 o'clock, so we'll have a lot of action going there. But right now, they're betting on the Colts. They got it at 4.5 and it went up to 6 points.
Hal, what's the biggest parlay you've seen at the book today?
We just had a guy bet a New England money line, Kansas City money line, Dallas money line, Green Bay money line, put up $5,000 to win $44.25.
Wow, some trust in the Cowboys, huh? That's risky, don't you think?
Maybe no trust in the Redskins, right?
Nicely done. Way to spin that one. Nicole, let's go to you. Not much for Buffalo to play for, but you're in Bills country, so are they still a popular play?
Yeah, so the Bills are locked in at number 5 regardless, and we're probably not going to see a lot of the starters today, but the fans still believe they're a better team, and they want to keep the momentum going into the playoffs, so they're still betting the Bills.
Any prop bets that have been popular there in Bills country today?
Yes, the popular prop bet we have today is for Josh Allen to score a touchdown, because with 1 rushing touchdown, he becomes the second player in a single season to get 20 passing touchdowns and 10 rushing.
Yeah, plus 475 for Allen to score a touchdown. Those are really good odds. Is that surprising or what?
Right, I agree. I hope he does it.
All right, let's move on. Andy, the Bears, they're favored in Minnesota. If you can believe it, Mitchell Trubisky is a favored quarterback today. Is Chicago getting a lot of looks?
Yeah. Normally in this matchup, we don't see hardly any action on Chicago. We're pretty much a Vikings territory up here, but with the Vikings being locked in at the 6, they got much to play for. So Cousins is out and stuff. So we've seen about 50% come back to the Bears, and everybody's on that under 36 points. So.
Yeah, hey, Andy, any teams getting more action than usual, given a lot of teams here resting players, to your point, with some seeding locked up?
Yeah, we usually take a lot of action on Baltimore, but today we've seen more of it come back to Pittsburgh with Lamar Jackson and Ingram being out, and then also the Tennessee we've seen a lot of action today on them with Hopkins being out, and yeah. So.
All right. Anyone? Final thoughts? Anybody? Anyone have anything to offer here that we must get to?
Go Eagles.
Go Giants.
Go
All
Bears.
right. Wow, look at that. Yeah, your rooting interest kicking in. Thank you to all of you. We'll talk more about those early games in a bit, but first, our pal, recent movie star of Uncut Gems, Mike Francesa. He'll be catching up with Terrell and Azak earlier this week to discuss the Week 17 slate.
The Packers are a 10-point favorites over the Lions. What are your early thoughts on this one?
That one won't be a problem. There's so much jumble now with the Seattle loss yesterday. It really threw the NFC into a crazy way. There's a lot of different things that can happen. Now, we know who are going to be in the playoffs. We just don't know what order they're going to finish in. There's a lot up for grabs in the last week, and a lot will be decided even off the Viking-Packer game tonight. But there's a lot to play for, so these teams are going to have to keep their eye on the ball. But the Lions have had such a miserable finish to their season. They just found out that Patricia's coming back for another year. You give them a break because they lost their quarterback, but they won't be able to put up much of a fight here. They'll have their bags packed before this game.
All right, and the Vikings open as 7-point favorites over the Bears at home. Can the Bears cover?
No, I think, again, the Bears look so bad getting booed off the field against Kansas City on Sunday night. It's been a miserable season. They know now they've made a mistake with Trubisky. He is not handling the problems at quarterback well. I don't think they could be in a worse place than against Minnesota on the road. Again, they'll have their bags packed despite their defensive prowess. I just think their offense is so bad, Minnesota could shut them out. That's how bad they are. So, no, I don't think either of the underdogs will put up a big fight in those spots, especially since the games are going to be important for the Packers and the Vikings, respectively.
Okay, let's get ready for this. We're going to fire through the rest of the Week 17 NFL slate, starting with the Bills as a 1.5-point favorites at home over the Jets. The Bills are locked in at the 5 seed, so could the Jets end the year on a high note here?
Yeah, you see, you never know. The teams that are locked in, you don't know what their philosophy is going to be. You know they're going to rest guys that are injured at all because they need them a week later in the playoffs. The teams that are locked in, you can't trust. You have to stay away from them in that spot because you just don't know. Some of them will have a philosophy where they want to go into the playoffs with momentum. They want to play hard. They'll play their starters. Some other ones will pull their starters right away and won't even dress their starters. So you have to be very careful from a standpoint of playing the last week. You have to always be very careful and understand there are teams that are going to pull all their players, especially when they're locked into playoff spots. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. You really do. Either play the underdog or stay away from the game.
All right, New Orleans, huge favorites at Carolina, 12.5 points. Saints still with an outside shot at the number 1 seed, so can they cover?
Yeah, I think they have to play hard. I think they have to take the game seriously. There's not they do have a chance to move up. So from that standpoint, the worst thing they'd like to see, and here's what's happened with Carolina. Carolina, they got rid of Rivera. They put in Perry Fuel. The players know there's a complete regime change coming. A lot of the players are going to be gone. All the coaches are going to be gone. That team stopped playing. So I can't see them giving the Saints any kind of fight if the Saints want to play. And I think the Saints have to play because there's they can gain something here. And any place you can gain up the ladder in the slotting, if you can go from not getting a bye to getting a bye, if you can go from the 2 to the 1, and all that is possible in the NFC. If that's the case, then you have to play. So if you're one of those teams that can have any kind of advancement at all, you got to try. And I think they will do that.
All right, we are back with our DK contributors, Steve Buchanan, Gary and Thorne, and the fantasy girl, Rosalie Michaels, who I think is just back from vacation as well. We're continuing our look at the 1 o'clock games that are only really about an hour and change away. Saints and Carolina to start us off, guys. Still a chance at the NFC's top seed there for New Orleans. Huge 13.5-point favorite. So is this spread too high to cover on the road, Rosalie? What do you think?
No, it's not. I mean, New Orleans is going to come out guns a-blazing. They want that, top seed. I see Sean Payton gunning for the Super Bowl right now. I don't see him slowing up for anything. And when you look at Carolina. They're just at home. They're terrible versus the spread. They're 2-4-1. And then on the opposite end, New Orleans on the road, 6-1 against the spread. DJ Moore is going to be out. He's inactive. So I think that this is going to be all Carolina all day. All New Orleans all day.
Yeah.
I just don't see how Carolina can keep up. And when you look at the time of possession between these two teams, Carolina is third in the league in terms of time of possession going up against Carolina that can't stop anybody. And then you've got Carolina that's 23rd going up against a really good Saints defense. So I think this is all New Orleans Saints.
Steve, I challenge you to say something that Rosalie didn't.
Well, first of all, I have to point out the fact that just like a lot of these NFL teams are doing today, it's nice to see our second string anchors at the news desk for this final show of the regular season. So hats off to you guys.
I don't know how
well, that's what you do in Week 17. You go to the backups, right?
Right. That's usually not a great show.
That didn't help.
So I'm kind of like what Rosalie was saying. I'm having a hard time seeing where Carolina's going to come up with the points in this game here. We just saw them put up only 6 points against the Colts. You think they're going to come in and put up more against the Saints? I'll give them 9. Maybe they can come up with 9 points in this game. But even like Christian McCaffrey, I know they're pushing for him to get those records. Oh, let it die. Everybody cares about that. We don't care about that. And it's not going to equate to more points in this game. This game is definitely, I think the Saints should have no problem covering this. I usually shy away from these high totals, but give me a break. Carolina's not going to score in this game. So yes, they can cover in this spot.
What does it say about Steve needing to be here in Week 17?
I'm here every week. I am here every week because I have to have some legitimacy to this show. You guys are here to fill in the roles.
I'm doing you a favor being here today, Bukes. Garion, what do you got?
Well, I hope to be a lot nicer.
I hope somebody has to be, right?
I think there's just so many things that have to go precisely in Carolina's favor to have them cover this line. And I guess one of the reasons you could think about possibly liking the Panthers in this spot is that, there's a chance the Saints sit some of their starters in the second half, but that's basically predicated on Green Bay having to get out to some outlandish lead against the Lions and Sean Payton, trusting a team that's not even in the same state he's currently inhabiting to hold a lead because like Rosalie said, there's still something to play for the Saints. He was dead set that he was going to play his starters today. And I think the Saints starters are a whole lot better than whatever the Panthers have left. They just seem, especially last week, it just seems like they've given up. Will Grier is clearly not ready to quarterback at the NFL level. And this should be a pretty lopsided game. So I'll take the Saints.
All right, Bukes. We've got a game total of 44 for this game. Do you like the over or the under?
I mean, I think I pretty much showed my hand in that last question there. But yeah, I mean, again, I just don't see where Carolina is going to score the points in this game. No DJ Moore, like Rosalie said. There's just not enough for them to rely upon. And Will Grier, like Garion said, is not a quarterback who is ready to be playing in the NFL. Now, these are two teams that have done very well with the over-under. Carolina 10-5, the Saints 8-7, but this is not the same Carolina team that we saw from earlier this season. I don't know how much of a boost Kyle Allen would really give this team, even if he was in there, but no, come on. I mean, sure, the Saints could put up 35 and we could be pushing the over here, but I just don't see it from Carolina, so I'm siding with the under on this one.
Yeah, Gary, and there is blowout potential, so how do you feel about a game total of 44?
It just seems like we saw the potential script last week for the Panthers on how this could reach the over, and it still wouldn't have got there. We watched the Panthers give up 2 special teams touchdowns, and that game still only got to 44 points when it was all said and done. So it just really doesn't seem like Carolina's going to be able to pull their weight to get to a number this big. So even if the Saints do come out and score 30, 31 points, I just don't think we get there. So I'm going to take the under.
Rosalie, you were saying how you like the Saints to come out guns blazing in this one, Super Bowl or bust kind of season. So how do you feel about potentially the Saints scoring a ton and maybe hitting it over?
Yeah, I think I'm the only one going over here. And I'm going over for a number of reasons. Number one, like you just said, yeah, the Saints could do the 45.5 all on their own.
Wow.
Who's going to stop them? Nobody. They've got too many weapons. And if you look at the history between these two teams, over the past 3 years, they've hit this over 6 times out of the 8. So 6-2 on the over on this. Plus, the Carolina defense, so bad, giving up 28.5 points. We know that the the Saints can score the points. Plus, they're number 27 in the red zone. They give up the red zone touchdown 62% of the time. You know the Saints are going to get in the red zone. They're going to get in the red zone a lot. And New Orleans, you know, if Carolina can get into the red zone, New Orleans isn't great in the red zone on defense either, and they're going to be without Eli Apple. So I'm going with the over here. I think this is going to be a higher scoring game.
Gary, and Carolina not so great defending running back. So would you lock in Alvin Kamara here at 7,800 today?
I think you do. I mean, maybe lock is a strong word, but I think you have to have heavy exposure. I mean, we saw last week, we've been seeing this 4 weeks. There's a reason they're 32nd against the run by DVOA. There's a reason they've given up the most rushing touchdowns by far of any team in football. Carolina just cannot defend any team on the ground. You know, there's a lot of very tempting running backs in that 7K range, so maybe you can kind of get a mix going. But, I mean, look, Jordan Wilkins on the final drive of that game against Indianapolis last week basically just got 85 yards and a touchdown because no one cares anymore for the Panthers. It's pretty clear. So I think, yeah, you have to get some pretty decent exposure here to Kamara.
Rosalie, our viewers can see it. Almost 80% of people believe that Kamara's going off today. Not a huge game, but between 10 and 19 fantasy points. Others expect a dud, really. What do you think?
I think it could be a huge game. He had 29 fantasy points last week versus a much better Tennessee Titans run defense. And now he gets Carolina, which is the worst in the league, right? 31st in terms of rushing yards a game. Last, almost 2 rushing touchdowns per game. Yeah, this could be a huge game and should be a huge game for Kamara. So, yeah, I think I'm all over him today.
Bucks?
I mean, the only problem that I have here is that obviously the matchup is great. And we saw Kamara go for 19.2 DraftKings fantasy points when they played them earlier this season. But at his salary right now, that wouldn't really be enough for me to get me to roster him. There's other guys in really good matchups too. You got guys like Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, who are going to be in good spots as well. But yeah, kind of like what they've both been alluding to, 25 rushing touchdowns allowed by the Jaguars. By the Panthers. The Jaguars are second with 16 allowed, so it hasn't even been close, the production that they've allowed here. But there's just a lot of guys in that range that I think I'd actually rather play. We've seen Kamara bust on multiple games in multiple good matchups this season, so that would be the only thing that I would maybe potentially keep my ownership a little bit lower than usual.
In NFC
Only
North,
one bust since he came back, though. Only one since he came back.
Well, that one really
Steve.
hurt. That one really hurt my feelings. So. That's where I'm at.
You're worried about your feelings being hurt.
Calm down.
NFC North battle between the Bears and Vikings. Not much for Minnesota to play for, just for pride, really. They're in the playoffs already, locked into a wild card at the 6. Chicago's favored by 3.5 points, so will the Bears win and cover? Rosalie.
I hate this game. It's terrible. It's a terrible game. No, the Bears can't cover. They can't cover a spread on the season to begin with. And in this game, when they are on the road, they're 1-6 against the spread. Minnesota even resting. I mean, they're not resting their starters. They're going to start their starters. Who knows how long they're going to play. But I just don't trust Chicago to be able to score the points here to cover the spread, even though it's only 3 points. So no, I still think that they're not going to cover. I just don't trust them on a whole offensively.
Steve, let us know again how you feel about Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback leading the Chicago Bears.
No, he's awful. I mean, everybody knows it. I'm not telling anything that nobody knows here. I mean, he had those couple weeks where he started rushing the ball, and he's like, oh, actually, yeah, I actually can do this. This is something that I can do, but he doesn't do it anymore. Like, it hasn't been consistent. And the Bears have been one of the worst teams against the spread when they're favored, 2-7 on the year so far. Like, I know he's facing all these second string, kind of like our news anchors here, second string guys that are playing for the Vikings today here. But this just hasn't been a team that you can trust all season long. I don't even know if this is a week that I could trust them here. Do I think they could squeak out a win? Probably just barely, but I'm still not convinced they can cover the spread here, even with it being as small as it is. Just don't like it at all.
Okay, Gary, do you agree with these other two, or you go in the other direction?
I mean, it's tough because this is a zombie Vikings team. Eric Kendricks isn't playing. Anthony Barr isn't playing. Their 2 starting tackles aren't playing. Although if you watched last week's game, that might be an improvement considering how the offensive line looked. No Kirk Cousins. No Dalvin Cook. But that being said, part of me almost feels like Mike Boone's going to score 80 fantasy points because it's worthless this week. So I don't know. I'm going to take the Bears here just because they're actually playing their starters. There's really not that much more logic to it than that. The little half-point swing, not the most enticing thing in the world, but I think they can get it done against the Vikings Week 2 preseason squad.
Okay, Falcons and Tampa, generally meaningless games, really just for pride. To pick them, Rosalie, who do you like?
Oh, Falcons and Tampa. I'm going to go with Atlanta here. Simply because they're on a win streak right now. They've won 3 against the spread. And Tampa Bay is 0-4-2 against the spread at home. So it's again one of these really, really ugly games. They did lose by 13 to Tampa Bay back in November. But I think that these are 2 totally different teams at this point. Their last 3 games, they've won by 12, won by 7, won by 20 against some good teams. So, yeah, I'm going with Atlanta here.
Garion, Bucks, Falcons?
Best game of the day, 2 hottest teams in football. Yeah, like Rosalie said, I guess you could really come up with positives for both these teams recently, but the Falcons are 6-2 ATS their past 8 games. And the Bucks haven't covered their last 7 home games. They've yet to cover a home game in 2019. So I guess knowing that and really not being able to differentiate these 2 teams, which again are playing pretty well the last 5 or 6 weeks, I'll take the Falcons.
Steve, I'm sure you have something to say.
Yeah, I'm going to roll the Falcons here too as well. I mean, the Falcons are the healthier team right now. Tampa Bay has just been decimated by injury, especially to their wide receivers. And you look at what Julio Jones has done against his Buccaneers team. 15 games played, 9 of those games, over 100 receiving yards. And then the Falcons defense, they haven't been one that have nabbed a ton of interceptions, but each time they've done so, they've done it multiple times. In the prior game against Jameis Winston, they had 2 against him. We all know how he loves to throw those interceptions. It's almost like part of his game plan at this point. He's got to get a couple in there just to do a regular Jameis Winston game. But with all that being said, I do like the Falcons more than the Buccaneers in this spot.
All right, let's go to one more early game. Browns-Bengals. Nothing on the line here either, unless you're really curious about Freddie Kitchens and his job security. Do you like Cleveland to cover 3 points to end its disappointing season? Rosalie.
This feels like it's going to be, it seems like it should be an easy Cleveland get here. But Cincinnati does not need to lose here to keep their spot, right? And so I'm a little worried about John Ross. John Ross had 13 targets last week, and Cleveland is really, really terrible in giving up those big plays to those wide receivers. So I really feel like this could be a little bite in the booty here by Cincinnati beating Cleveland. Both teams, I think, with Cleveland, I know that all those receivers there, especially Landry, he's going to be auditioning for his next spot. And this is a close one for me, but I'm going with Cincinnati in this.
All right, it's Andy Dalton's potential final game as a Bengal, Steve. Does you like the red rifle? I guess earlier I said his name wrong, so pardon me. I guess that does make me a second stringer.
Yeah, like I said on SNY, Dalton is auditioning for his new team for the Panthers. So he's going to look good in this game here. The Browns have not been a good team against the spread when they're favored. 4-5-1 as favorites against the spread so far this season. I would much rather side with the Bengals against a team that all they have to do is win in this spot here. I don't think Cleveland's going to have much to show for in this game. They have totally lost. Freddie Kitchens has just absolutely lost his team here. Give me the Bengals, who can't lose that number 1 pick, to actually come out and play a game today.
Garion, you in on the Bengals too?
I mean, like these guys said, there's some weird narratives happening with this game. You'd almost expect in most situations the team to want to play for their coach's job. That's clearly not going to happen. There's a very good chance, and it would be very fitting for the Browns to lose to the Bengals to end this nightmarish season. But at the same time, I understand the Bengals can win and keep the number 1 pick in the draft. I don't think that was the thing stopping them from being a good team. I think they just stink. So, just 3 weeks ago, we had the Browns in Cleveland, granted, win this game by 8 points, and it really should have been 11. There was like a last-second meaningless field goal I just think the Browns are a better, more talented team. I think they can cover this.
Game total here, 43. It's about average anyway, maybe a little higher than that. But Steve, over or under?
Both these teams have not been good with the over/under. We have Cleveland at 7-8. The Browns at 6-9. Both these teams have not done well with the over/under. But I think actually this total is just a little bit too low. I think that we can actually see some points scored in this game. There's guys I like on both sides here. Joe Mixon, one of them there. John Ross I like here. Maybe we'll get something out of Nick Chubb against a very poor Bengals run defense. So I think this total is just a little bit too low. I don't expect it to go over by much, but I think they'll just be able to hit the over on this total. So I'm going to take the over.
Gary and viewers like the under, 57%. How about you?
I also like the under. Look, these are just two not very explosive offenses. Cleveland has had a tendency to produce, at a relatively elite level when they face just awful opponents, which Cincinnati is. But at the same time, the Bengals are averaging the second fewest points per drive of any team in football. I just don't know if both of these teams can find enough points in the same week to get to a number that's still reasonably high at 43, so I'll take the under.
Rosalie, which way are you leaning?
I'm leaning over. I agree with Steve. I think it's over, but just barely over. If you look at the history between these two teams, they play each other really well. The last three out of the last four. That's what I was trying to say.
There it is.
They've hit the over around this over point. There was the one they didn't was just a push. And like I said, Cincinnati, they've been playing a little better. They've hit the over now in their last 3 games, including a big win over Miami. They're starting to show up. They hit the over against New England. They hit the over against Cleveland in their last game a few weeks ago. So I like the over here. I think that they can score some points. And we were saying before that Cleveland has nothing to play for. So I think we're going to see more scoring than we expect here.
All right, we'll talk to you guys in a bit. We're going to look at the 4 o'clock games next. And remember, Adam and I would like to hear from you and answer some of your questions on today's show. So however you're watching or following along, you can interact with the show on social media, Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, and ask your DFS or your Sportsbook questions. We just might answer later on.
And of course, as an added bonus for you in Facebook land, keep an eye out for the special features that include polls, questions, and the chance for your comments to appear right here on the show. Cowboys beat writer Nick Eatman joins the program right now.
How do you see the Dallas offense attacking Washington on Sunday? Do you see them getting Zeke more involved, or will they try to air it out again?
Well, I think they'll tell you, we'll take what Washington gives. But I think when you look at what the Redskins have struggled on, they don't do well against the run. I believe that they're last or second to last in the NFL against the run. So that's going to be something the Cowboys are going to have to take advantage of. They were able to do that in the first meeting as well. That opened up big plays. If you remember, the Cowboys had 3 or 4 really long passes in the game. Dak had a play action where he ran for 42 yards. I think that was a career long. So they need to be able to establish that running game and do that early. Once you do that, it'll open up so many other opportunities, play action and play fakes and boots and waggles and things like that.
So Jerry Jones was very vocal, and he said this week that his radar is turned on when it comes to the possibility of a coaching change. Do you think Jason Garrett's fate is sealed, regardless of the outcome of Week 17?
I wouldn't say sealed if the Cowboys were able to win and then do something in the playoffs. I mean, it's not just get in the playoffs, I don't believe, and I don't think it's even a win. A win to get them in the playoffs would obviously help, open up the door for something magical to happen. And that's really where we are at this point, I think, with Jason Garrett. I think it's going to have to take something that nobody is seeing and for them to be consistent, which they haven't been all year, and go and beat teams that are really good, which they really haven't done all year. So it's not likely. But a win that keeps them in the playoffs, if they actually make the playoffs, and then anything can happen, I don't think his fate would be sealed then. But lose this game, then yeah, probably so. Especially if you lose this game and the Eagles lost and you had a chance to win and go to the playoffs, then yeah, I think that would happen. But I don't think Jason Garrett will be fired. I don't think they have to be. They won't have to fire him. His contract will run out, and the Cowboys can just part ways and move on. That's what I believe will happen.
Like you said, we'll see if Garrett can pull off some magic. But if he's out the door, who could you see coming in and coaching this team? Is there a guy you would put your money on?
Oh, I don't really. I don't really wouldn't put money on anything like that. I think that there's so many different options that they would go. I'm not going to give you a good answer because I don't really have one. I could see the college names. I think personally, I'll answer this. I do think a coach with pro experience would be better. Somebody that's been around in the NFL. Even the best names you can come up with that coached in college, history shows that doesn't go as well, regardless of their success in college. Totally different game from that standpoint, from a coaching standpoint. I think the preference would be to get somebody that understands the NFL, especially when you're talking about where this team is. And this team has some talent. They're still relatively young. The core is there. I think it would be better to get a guy that understands what it takes to win in the NFL. So I know that doesn't give you the answer you're looking for, but I really don't have it.
Good to hear from Mr. Eatman. Cowboys are at home today against the Redskins. That's a big one. We've got a couple of DraftKings contributors joining us now, Jeff Ulrich and Greg Ehrenberg. Good to have you guys both with us here. It's good to see you, Greg. I know it's the first we've seen your beautiful face this morning. NFC East.
You nervous? You all right?
Yeah, he's choked up. But go ahead, Greg.
Uncomfortable being on camera with me at the same time.
Well, I haven't played for a while, second string. So NFC East title implications this afternoon when the Eagles visit the Meadowlands to face the Giants, and that of course affects those Cowboys. If Philadelphia wins, it's a divisional champion. So that's plenty of motivation, Greg. But will the Birds cover the 4 points on the road?
The NFC East is such a disaster. Like, my gut feeling about these games today is just the Giants and Redskins win outright and just something totally crazy happens. So I think that there's a little bit of motivation baked into this spread here. The Eagles haven't been particularly good, so it's hard for me to reason them being more than a field goal favorite on the road against anybody. And it's not like the Giants have been, they haven't been good, but it's not like they've been totally terrible lately. The offense is playing pretty well. The Eagles' defense is terrible. I think this should be a pretty competitive game, so I think the spread's a little bit too wide.
Jeff, what do you think? Birds cover the 4-point spread on the road?
No, I don't think so at all. I'm completely on page with Greg here. Look, Philly is 3-4 against the spread on the road this year, but they should be 2-5 because one of those against the spread wins was against Washington, where Dwayne Haskins just handed them a touchdown with 5 seconds left on the last play of the game. So Philly's also given up 29 points against on the road. They've given up 120 total yards more on the road versus at home. This has not been a good road team. The Giants are clearly the more talented team on offense right now. All their players are healthy. All of the Philadelphia receivers are banged up. Good. What do you do? They get Jordan Howard back. I don't really think that's going to make a difference anyways. So, no, I think the Giants are going to win outright here. And I agree with Greg. Something crazy is going to happen today. I think Dallas might get in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with these guys. Whatever we think we know about this putrid division tends to swing the other way. We'll find out. Over-under's 45 here, Jeff. Which side are you leaning with?
I would still lean towards the under here. Philly has morphed into like this slower-paced team because they have no receivers. They don't really have a good hurry-up offense. It's only going to be magnified today, in my opinion, with no Ertz. I know the Giants have some talent, but they might have a little bit of trouble running the ball. I'm expecting a close game. I think under 45 here is definitely a side I like.
One for under. What about you, Greg?
Yeah, so I'm going to lean towards the over here just because I do think the Giants' offense is pretty solid now, especially because they have a lot of their weapons going. And the other thing, too, is the Giants' defense is so terrible. They just gave up 1 million points to the Redskins' offense. They let the Redskins march down the field and force overtime at the end of the fourth quarter. So for that reason, I think that it doesn't really matter who's active for the Eagles' offense. I think they have a pretty good chance to score on the Giants. And then we know that the Eagles' defense generally can't stop anybody. So I think this game is a pretty good chance of shooting out.
You mentioned that Eagles offense. Jordan Howard is back, but Miles Sanders has looked very good these last few weeks. So from a DFS perspective, Greg, would you look at Sanders at 6,800 today?
I'm just not comfortable with the price tag because we look at how Peterson's usually run his backfield. He likes to give everybody touches. So I understand that Miles Sanders has been really good when he's gotten the ball. He's involved in the passing game. But still, I think Jordan Howard's going to take touches away from him. Sanders at his highest price point of the season. It's a really strong matchup against the Giants. But still, it's hard for me to think that he's going to get as many touches as he's gotten in the previous weeks. So for me, just the volume isn't there for me to pay that kind of price tag.
Jeff, Howard was cleared for contact in the middle of the week, so it's not like he got a lot in this week to get ready for this one. So does that affect your thinking here, spending?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think Miles Sanders is actually quite an easy fade this week. I think people are just not not baking in this Jordan Howard news enough. I mean, look, if it's inside the 5-yard line and it, they need a carry here, probably going to Jordan Howard. That was the trend at the beginning of the season with Doug Peterson using Jordan Howard in those situations. He actually had become close to a bell cow back in some situations. He's healthy. It's a playoff game. I just can't see them just leaving him on the bench for Miles Sanders. I know Sanders has played well, but like Boston Scott was getting in there as well over Sanders in some spots. So I think 6,800 is way too much to pay. I know the matchup's good, and Greg's right. This game, it does have a chance of shooting out, but no, I think it's too much.
If Philly can't get it done, loses to New York, then Dallas obviously could take the division with a home win over Washington. Who among us would really be surprised by that? But can the Cowboys cover 12.5 points, Jeff?
I mean, I'm so sick of talking about the Cowboys this year. Like, it's making my brain hurt trying to handicap this team week to week. Everything says they should cover this spread. Look, they got Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup going up against a secondary that's beyond injured. Their pass rush disappeared last week. Zeke Elliott should be able to run through this defense just like Saquon Barkley did. I guess I'll take the Cowboys. I don't like it, though, because, again, we've seen this team let down in so many spots this year. But, yeah, give me the Cowboys. Dak and Amari have been good at home. I guess I'll go there once more and trust them.
Greg, you also hate taking the Cowboys?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to say this. If you parlay the Redskins and Giants money lines, it's 14-1. I don't think it's all that likely, but the NFC East is just such a train wreck that I think something crazy is going to happen today. We've talked about that. It's so hard for me to say that the Cowboys should be laying 12.5 points against anybody. They've just been such a disaster this season. They've won some games they probably shouldn't have won. They've certainly let up in games that it seemed they should have won easily. So for 12.5 points, it's too wide of a spread for a team that's so untrustworthy like Dallas.
I hope Washington wins just so we don't have to talk
me too.
about Dallas
Me
anymore.
too. But on the other side, though, there's a part of me that also wants to see the Cowboys somehow sneak into the playoffs and win a couple of playoff games. So, we have to keep Jason Garrett now.
That would be pretty funny.
Oh, it sounds like they're probably going to can him regardless, even if they, unless they win a Super Bowl. But anyway.
All right, we're going to move on here to the Steelers. They need a win and a Titans loss or tie. Because of that, Pittsburgh is a 1-point road favorite in Baltimore versus the Ravens team. We found out this morning is resting Mark Andrews. They're also resting Marquise Brown. No Lamar Jackson. No Mark Ingram, of course. So can the Steelers cover here, Jeff?
I don't trust Pittsburgh in this spot. They've been kind of a bad road team, mainly under Mike Tomlin, especially the last couple of years. Their defense has been far less effective on the road. And you just look at Baltimore as a team. I mean, this is a team with quality backups. This is a team that performed in preseason. I mean, with their backups, you have Justice Hill, Gus Edwards. RG3 can run similar style offense to Lamar Jackson, so they've been smart in that way. They have multiple backup tight ends who are good at catching the ball. I don't think you're going to see that much of a drop-off here. I really like the Ravens in this spot, especially at home. So, no, I don't trust Pittsburgh at all.
Yeah, Greg, you can look at it how Jeff just looked at it, where there's a lot of talent still offensively for Baltimore. But it almost feels like the Ravens are just giving up this game, right? Pittsburgh is depleted. So how do you feel?
Yeah, I actually do like the Steelers a little bit in this spot. And I do think this is one where the narrative matters a little bit because the Steelers are playing for so much more than Baltimore. To Jeff's point, I understand they have quality backups. But still, we don't even know if it's going to be the backups that are in all game. Like Harbaugh said earlier in the week that he would like to get McSorley some snaps at quarterback in this game. So who knows how much Robert Griffin's even going to be playing at quarterback. I think that the spread in this game should be favoring the Steelers a little bit more. I think that we're looking at the name value of these teams a little bit, and that's weighed into the books here because these are going to be second and third string players going for the Ravens. The Steelers are going to be running their starters for the entire game, and they really need to win this game for the playoffs. So I lean towards the Steelers in this spot.
Robert Griffin III, 5,100. Don't call him Bob. He doesn't like that. Would you go with the QB at this number, Greg?
So I wouldn't, just because of what I said about how Harbaugh earlier in the week said that he wants to get McSorley snaps at quarterback. It's not a definite thing, but just the idea that Robert Griffin possibly won't be playing the entire game at quarterback. I get that he's cheap, but still on the whole, the Steelers' defense has been good this year, and it's just hard to trust a quarterback in that kind of situation where we don't know he's playing the entire game.
Be kind of fun, though, Jeff, to see him in this situation. What do you think, RG3 at 5,100?
It could work out, but again, when you have the coach saying he might not even play the whole game, you can't do it for DFS. If you want a cheap quarterback this week, I'd go to Case Keenum at 4,600. Far better chance that game shoots out, too, with Washington and Dallas, and you could pair him with like Steve Sims and get a really cheap wide receiver QB stack. So no, I don't like Robert Griffin today.
Okay, getting back to the Titans, Jeff, they can make that Steelers-Ravens game meaningless with a win in Houston. And the great thing about this week is a lot of those teams are playing at the same exact time. So the only time they can really check the score is at halftime, if they so please. Tennessee's a 6-point favorite. Houston has already clinched a playoff spot. Do you think, Jeff, the Titans will cover?
I think they will. Houston's kind of obviously given up on this game. And I mean, that's obviously a big red flag, like, Captain Obvious here to begin with. But at the same time, I mean, Tennessee has been a quality team. Obviously, they didn't get it done the last couple of weeks here, but you look back at the rate Ryan Tannehill is playing, getting Derrick Henry back off a week of rest should be just a really big factor for them. I don't really feel like, any of the other injuries on their team are that big a deal for them, especially going up against the backups. A.J. Brown here put up a monster game against Houston in the last couple times they've met, so it's a good matchup there. I feel like everything considered, I'm happy taking Tennessee at -6. I wouldn't really want to take them much more than this because, you could get a spirited division opponent here and just put up a little bit too much of a fight and make this a little bit closer game than it should. But still, at -6, I'll take Tennessee. It's not my favorite bet of the week, but I'd still lean towards the Titans.
Greg, all hands on deck for Tennessee, of course. Houston, there are reports that Deshaun Watson will be backing up A.J. McCarron this week, and then DeAndre Hopkins, while active, is going to have a limited role today. So how does that impact your thoughts on this spread?
Yeah, so I like Tennessee in this spot. I'm usually not a big narrative guy, but week 17 of the NFL season, I think, is the one time that we probably have to consider narratives more so than any other type of situation for any type of sports betting at all in any sport. So I think that the motivation is much stronger on the Tennessee side of this game, obviously. Just looking at how the Texans are playing this game, planning on backups and then starters either not playing or only playing limited snaps. 30 in the playoffs, they've clinched the division, so there isn't a lot of motivation for them to play. And I really think that all favors Tennessee. Late in the game, the Texans aren't going to do anything that's going to jeopardize their playoff run. So I think this really strongly favors Tennessee, and I like them to win by more than a touchdown.
All right, good stuff. The sweat is rolling on. We take you up until lock. But first, let's hear about tonight's Sunday Night Showdown. KFC Sunday Night Showdown breaking down Seahawks and Niners.
The NFC West title is on the line this Sunday night with the 49ers visiting the Seahawks. Winner takes the division. And this is the Sunday Night Showdown series presented by KFC. Tyrell and Azak here with Steve Buchanan. Steve, not sure if you're siding with the Birds for this one, but who is your Colonel's pick in the captain spot?
Yeah, I'm most certainly going to be going with George Kittle here. We talk about teams that you target against with tight ends. Arizona Cardinals come to mind, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but the Seahawks have quickly become one of those teams, allowing an average of 15.5 DraftKings fantasy points. They're one of two teams that have allowed over 1,000 receiving yards to this position. Now we have George Kittle coming into this game, who just made 13 catches on 17 targets for 132 yards. So definitely a good spot for him in this game.
If you are looking to stack someone with your Colonel spot pick, who are you excited about, Steve?
Yes, I'm actually going to be going with Russell Wilson here. Look, obviously the running back position for the Seahawks has quickly been decimated. No more Chris Carson, no more CJ Prosise, and the 49ers have been a team that you can actually throw against. Over the last 3 weeks, 2 of those games over 300 passing yards. In those 3 games, 9 passing touchdowns thrown against them. So Russell Wilson's probably going to have to be throwing a lot. This is a team that's run the ball 42% of the time on the season, but going to have to do a lot of passing in this game.
That's all for this edition of the Sunday Night Showdown series. KFC's beloved chicken and waffles are back, and now they've got a kick. Ooh. Enjoy Nashville hot chicken and waffles if you're feeling spicy, or stick to classic chicken and waffles if you're feeling, well, not spicy. Order online or get them delivered at kfc.com.
All right, welcome back, Adam. Brendan here discussing what's been going on today in the world of the National Football League, Week 17. And while we have to say goodbye to some of you, it's too bad, right? But we have still plenty of coverage going around our social media accounts, right?
Yeah, obviously, if you are looking for insights, you're looking to set your DFS lineups, before lock, or, of course, any sports betting advice that you're looking for your sports books, you can get them on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever it is. You can find the questions or solicit your questions there, and we will find them, give them to our analysts, and see how we can help you out, of course.
Excellent. Okay, and yeah, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere, pretty much. We will get to your questions. Before we return for more coverage here on The Sweat, let's go to Terrell and Azak chatting with Mike Francesa. Oh, we're going to keep it here. Pardon me. We're going to keep it here. So as we say goodbye, we'll say goodbye to News 12, Long Island. Thanks for watching. All right, here we go. Let's keep the show rolling.
Please. All right, let's bring back in Gary and Thorne. Rosalie Michaels, the fantasy girl, back with us for a continued look at the later games this afternoon. We'll start with the Cardinals in L.A. to face the Rams. Guys, relatively meaningless game. Feels like there are a handful of those at least over the course of the day today, especially with some of them happening at the same time. You know, we'll have outcomes by the fourth quarter, some lopsided games that'll probably tell us, hey, this one doesn't really matter all that much either. But at least with this one, we know from the get-go, it's mostly playing for pride. In L.A. favored by 6.5 at home. Will the Rams cover, Gary?
I don't think so. Initially, like an hour ago, this was maybe the game I wanted to steer clear from the most because there was just so many variables. Kyler Murray was a game-time decision. You know, we had reports earlier in the week. It really hasn't come up all that much, but Sean McVay was kind of really guarded and coded about whether or not he was going to play his starters the entirety of the game. He said something along the lines of, we know we have to be smart and, you know, possibly get some guys some rest. And it's, you know, probably Todd Gurley is involved in that. We don't know if Jared Goff is. So there was just so much going on here. But, you know, Adam Schefter is reporting that unless something goes exceedingly wrong in warmups, Murray is going to play. And for me, that's enough to take a Cardinals team that just seems to cover. They're really, really good at covering as underdogs. You know, they've covered 6 of their 8 games on the road this year. So I'm just going to take the Cardinals and the points.
Rosalie, how about you? What do you think? You have that kind of faith in the Cardinals as well?
Yeah, I'm actually going the opposite direction just because I like what the Cardinals are doing here in Arizona. You know, we're seeing some movement forward on the offensive side of the ball, which is what we've been asking for after last year. So I like it. But the problem is that after last week, where they really showed up against those Seahawks, really, you know, took them down, and that was pretty exciting. Cliff Kingsbury is feeling good about his job right now. He knows that he's got this offense moving in the right direction. If you look at the history between these two teams, yeah, you look at they're both really good against the spread. In general, but Cardinals within the division, Gary was just saying, Cardinals are good on the road, but they're not as good within the division. They're 2-2-1 within the division. Meanwhile, the Rams against the spread are 4-1 within the division. And the Cardinals always seem to have this Achilles heel with the Rams. If you look at the past few years of what the Rams have done to the Cardinals, 34-7, 31-9, 34-0, 32-16. It's ugly, no matter whether the Cardinals are home or they're away. I think this is a closer game, but I think that the Rams still cover here.
As Gary mentioned, that news about Kyler Murray makes the over-under interesting now, 45 points. We're going to go to Rosalie first. So with that in mind about Kyler, does that make you hesitate now about points being scored from Arizona and hitting the over?
No, I still think the Cardinals are going to be conservative here. They may try some things. Let's remember, this Rams defense is still really good. Their offense has been iffy, but the Rams defense is good. It's, 8th by DVOA, their defense as a whole. And they're 9th against the run, which is what we like out of Kyler Murray, right? So I think that the Cardinals are not going to be scoring, as I mentioned before, as many points as we would like. But so I'm actually going under here. You look at both the teams. The Rams are 2-4 on the over at home. The Cardinals are 3-4 when they're on the road. So I think it's going to be a closer game, but I think that it still goes under.
Gary, and you said that the Cardinals are really good at covering the spread. Now, how does that impact how you feel the game will be scoring-wise? A high-scoring game or a lower-scoring game, especially when you consider the Rams are eliminated from any playoff contention?
Yeah, that's kind of the key. I just can't really trust that I know what the Rams' offense is going to look like in the third quarter of this game. I again, I'm just very wary about what McVay is going to do with his playing time for his starters. So considering that Kyler Murray might not be 100%, especially with his legs, which is kind of how he's been producing most of his points in recent weeks, I'll just take the under here.
Okay, so knowing that Kyler Murray is a game-time decision, as we've talked about, is it time to ride Kenyan Drake? What do you think, Aaron?
I think Drake's a perfectly fine play. I mean, he's shown the last couple of weeks what his ceiling is, and it is a very, very high ceiling. At the same time, I'm probably just more comfortable finding $400 to put Nick Chubb in a lineup. The Rams, their run defense has been, it's proven to be susceptible sometimes, but at other times they've looked impenetrable. So it's kind of hard to get a read on them. But they did do a very good job of shutting down the Cardinals' rushing attack 4 weeks ago. I believe that game was played. But, in that time, we've seen 2 Dallas running backs each go for 100 yards in the same game. So I think you can get some exposure to him in GPPs, but he's far from like a cash game play for me, especially with how his salary has risen in the past 2 weeks.
Rosalie, what do you think? Kenyan Drake, 7,100?
Yeah, I agree with Gary, and I think that it's just too high. Yeah, he's had 2 monster games. But as Gary said, when he played these Rams 4 weeks ago, he only scored 7 fantasy points. So it's not enough at that. And when you've got such great options around him, like Kamara, who that team is going for something, like Mixon, who I think is just going to show off this week versus Cleveland, Chubb, Mack, they're all better choices. You can get Mack for cheaper, and I think he's got an even higher ceiling. I think I see Arizona doing a little bit more trickery. They're going to test out some things this week as opposed to just running up the gut.
Raiders still have an outside chance to make the playoffs with a win and a lot of help, but they're still underdogs in Denver. Can the Broncos, Rosalie, cover a 3.5-point spread?
Yeah, I really like what the Broncos have been doing lately. Drew Lock came in, and this offense looks different. So, yeah, I think they can cover. I mean, especially when you look at Oakland. Oakland is 1-5 in their last 5 games in getting the against the spread. Meanwhile, Denver is 5-2 at home against the spread. And if you look at, I'm really interested in Cortland Sutton today. Oakland gives up the 4th most yards per play, and they're 3rd worst in the red zone defense. So I think that they definitely can. Denver can cover here and will cover here. So I just don't see. Oakland seems to have given up, in my opinion. I think we'll see a lot of DeAndre Washington, but I don't think that we'll see much of the passing game there. And I think that that's what they need to do in order to keep up with Denver.
All right, Gary, and you with Rosalie, or any hope for the Oakland Raiders?
I mean, there's hope. We're talking about a rookie quarterback who's made 4 starts in his career. But no, I'm gonna side with Denver. Like Rosalie mentioned, Oakland's only covered 1 of their last 6 games. Denver has covered their last 4 games against losing teams. Denver's also just covered 6 of their last 8 games overall. They've been playing pretty well. That defense has been spectacular. I just think that's the best unit on the field. And with the home field advantage on top of all that, and considering how the Raiders have kind of struggled away from home this season, I'm going to take the Broncos.
Okay, something that we know is not going to help Oakland. Josh Jacobs not expected to play. So is there anyone else in that Raiders backfield that's worth rostering, Rosalie?
Absolutely. I mentioned him a little bit earlier. DeAndre Washington, he's only 5,200, and he's just had lots of volume, right? The past 2 weeks that Jacobs was out, week 14, he had 20 touches. Week 16, he had 25. Just the volume alone from that price point, I'm going to like it.
What about you, Garion?
I'm a little iffy. I think the volume is fantastic for his price point, and there's not really a lot of comparable guys in that range. But at the same time, Denver's only allowed 100-yard rusher since all the way back in week 5. They haven't allowed a running back or an opposing running back to score a rushing touchdown in the past 5 weeks. They've only allowed 9 rushing touchdowns for the season. I think they're one of 7 teams that have allowed single-digit rushing touchdowns this year. It's just a really, really tough matchup. So I think you could see Washington get in the range of 18 to 21 carries, but I just don't know if that's going to translate to that many fantasy points.
Okay, final game of the 15-game main slate. That's Colts-Jaguars. Indy favored by 5.5 on the road. Question is, any reason to care about this, Garion?
No. I have been on record on this show many times that I think they should just take the entire AFC South and shoot it into the sun, and we don't have to worry about it anymore. But look, I think that there are two things that I'm pretty confident about in regard to this game. One, I think the Colts are still playing hard, and I think Frank Reich made the case after that Monday Night Football massacre a couple of weeks back that they were going to continue to play Jacoby Brissett. They were going to continue to try and win games, and it seems like that's what they're doing. They're engaged at the very least. The Jaguars have checked out. They are just no longer showing up to the field on Sunday. Their last 6 losses have been by at least 12 points. They get blown out all the time, and 5.5 points just doesn't seem like enough to scare me away from the Colts. So I'm taking Indy here.
Rosalie, you also liking to send an entire division into orbit?
Yeah, I think maybe we should put the South and then the NFC East together, and then maybe somebody will win that division. So, but yeah, I agree with Gary, and you know what? It's a crappy, ugly little game, but Jacksonville has given up. I'm not sure what they're doing down there. The only thing that's interesting down there right now is Leonard Fournette, and he's not even playing in this game. So, yeah, you got to go Indy. They look a lot better on paper. They look a lot better in games. They've had some really, really good games this year. And Brissett's been pretty usable in terms of at the quarterback position. T.Y. is going to be playing, so I think they're going to be starting to see try to get a little bit more of that chemistry going into next year with T.Y. and Jacoby Brissett. So I like Indy here as well.
Rosalie, Gary, and great stuff. We'll be talking to you again soon. And we had Mike Francesa join us earlier in the program. Here is part 2 of our conversation right now.
New England are 15.5-point favorites against the Dolphins, who have played too well to earn the number 1 pick. The Pats need a win to clinch a bye, so can they cover this number?
Bill Belichick historically has played these games hard. He usually does. Now, be careful here with the enormous number because the Fish and Fitzpatrick have played very well. I mean, they really have. They've played very hard. They're in there trying. So I wouldn't go near that number there. But obviously the Pats will do what they have to do to win the game. As far as that astronomical number, they haven't been a very good offensive team this year. I'd be careful with that.
Chargers at Chiefs, with Kansas City coming in as 7.5-point favorites. Patrick Mahomes and company can still move up to 2 or down to 4. So do they take care of business at home?
Well, you know what? It's funny. Again, they're playing well. I think they really want the defense, which has played so well in recent weeks, to go into the playoffs. They're not going to get the 2. They know that. It's going to go Baltimore, New England. So they're going to play the first weekend. But I think they want to go in there with momentum. So I think they play the game for real, especially defensively. Play the game for real, and that should be enough here. Their defense, if you look, Kansas City has done a great job in recent weeks, and Spags' defenses are historically better as the season goes on. They're very technical, and as the players catch on to it, it really makes a difference. And if you look now, Kansas City has put up really good numbers week after week now defensively. I think that will continue here. I think they will play hard here. I'm sure the Chargers will go in and try, but Kansas City's allowed 3-3, 16-9, and 17 in the last 5 weeks. Any one of those gets them another win and gets them a comfortable win.
In a game with certainly nothing on the line, the Falcons go to Tampa as 1-point underdogs. Who do you like here?
You know, it's funny. These two teams both had weird years. They're both probably better than their record indicates because Tampa has made so many mistakes. Winston has had so many turnovers. Atlanta, amazingly, is going to have a losing season, but they beat both the Saints and the 49ers this year. We know what kind of talent they have. So this game will probably be a very close game. It all depends on how many interceptions Winston throws. When he doesn't throw interceptions, they can beat anybody. When he throws interceptions, and he throws a ton of them, they have a lot of problems. I'd go with Atlanta in a close game.
Another game where there is not much to play for but pride. The Browns are 3-point road favorites over the Bengals. Can the Browns end the year on a high note?
You know, I think it's important for the Browns. The head coach is still hopeful he can convince ownership. He's right on the hot seat right now. Right now, they're not sure they want to bring him back. It's been such a bitterly disappointing year. The Bengals have checked out. They tried a couple of weeks, but they'll check out. They're going to have the number 1 pick. They're going to have Burrows. They're going to take him, the kid from LSU, with the first pick in the draft. They'll trade Dalton off. I got to figure that the Browns will go out with a win. They have the more talent, and Kitchens is fighting for his job. So he's hoping to get a second season. It's not guaranteed he will, but he's fighting to get one. So you'd have to like the Browns there.
Welcome back here on The Sweat, and since Steve Buchanan has made it clear he thinks he should be hosting the show today, this is a point in time where we like to give he and Reed Fowler an opportunity to debate their hot takes. So, Bukes, go ahead.
So, it's week 17. Like, hot takes are pretty hard to come by because we have like a bunch of B stringers, we got a bunch of C stringers, like all these backups here. But I have one that I actually legitimately think is going to happen here. I'm feeling good about it. Not only do the Redskins cover against Dallas, they outright beat them today, to put an exclamation point on this absolutely just, I don't even have a good word for it that's appropriate for the show. Just what a debacle of the season for the Cowboys here. But when they faced them early in the year, the Case Keenum was under center once again. This was before the Haskins experiment started coming in. They only lost by 10 points in the game to Dallas, and that was a Dallas team that was playing much, much better than they are now. Like, this Dallas team is literally just about to implode. This would be the perfect exclamation point to end their season and just knock them out of complete contention. Nobody wants Jason Garrett anymore. If Dallas players are smart, they lose this game so they can get this joke of a coach out of town. So Dallas not only loses this game, but the Redskins cover. I just think the Redskins have a legitimate chance to take this game here today.
What I'm surprised about, because I actually like this take, and you'll see why in a second, is that you didn't use dope or fraud to mention what Jason Garrett has done.
Not strong enough. Not strong enough.
And wouldn't this just be exactly like you were mentioning, the exclamation point? This is typical Jason Garrett, right? That a game that they need to win, a game that they're supposed to win by 11 points or more, that they absolutely lose. The only thing I would worry about, though, is that, again, like we mentioned this earlier, Dallas at home are such a better team.
It doesn't matter anymore.
I know, but that's the one part that gets me just not exactly there. I like it in terms of picking up against a team like Dallas, who just is an anomaly. You don't know if they're going to win this game or cover. They haven't done anything to show us that this season, so I don't hate it, because you know why? Kelvin Harmon at $3,900 is a receiver on the Redskins. I like him to 5x his production, or his price right now in terms of his production against the Dallas Cowboys. If you look at him, 88% snap share over the last 4 games. You have a guy who's running about 25 routes in those games. Terry McLaurin is ruled out. He's not going to be playing. We have Steven Sims. Can he garner that wide receiver 1 role? You still need someone to pass to if you're Case Keenum. Case Keenum is throwing in about an 8-yard ADOT right now. Harmon's at $3,900. He gets you that ADOT of about 12 yards per reception. And what we've seen over the last 4 games where he's been in that role, at least 1 red zone target. And so look, even if this game does go, like you were saying, Washington's side, right, and they're winning this game, they're going to have to use it, not necessarily just on the ground with AP, but through the air. And if they're losing, they're going to need to pass more and more and more. So Harmon at $3,900, 5x his price. I got it for a touchdown here.
Yeah, I mean, look, like we mentioned at the top here, week 17, anything is on the table here. I mean, you got all these bumps running out on the field who are starters, who are not normally starters here. Harmon's been someone who's actually been in the mix, even when McLaurin was healthy. Yep. But I was just going over what the Cowboys, what opposing wide receivers have done over as of late. In terms of DraftKings points, 40, 37, and 19, that weird game with the Eagles here. But wide receivers have been doing very well against a Dallas secondary that, for the most part, all season long has done very well. But, for someone like me who likes the Redskins to win in this game, Harmon could be one of those reasons why they can do so. So I think these are actually some pretty good hot takes. Julian wasn't on here because he stinks. And speaking of someone who stinks, Brendan Glasheen, we'll throw it back to you.
Well, that was very well done, Steve. Great toss back to myself.
Good
Thank
host.
you very much. When we return, the whole crew, Steve, Reed, Jeff, Greg, Rosalie, Adam Kaufman. We're going to make their picks, make it rain picks for today's Week 17 slate. But first, we're going to go to Terrell and Azak and DallasCowboys.com reporter Nick Geetman discussing the Cowboys' must-win game, as Steve very eloquently pointed out, against the Redskins.
So the coach has been on the hot seat all year, but now it seems the fire is turned up on some of the players like Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper. Both will need new contracts at the end of the season. Do you think both these guys should come back, or would a shakeup of the roster benefit Dallas?
Well, there's going to be a shakeup on the roster for sure. Maybe not with those two guys. You look at the defensive side of the ball, there's so many guys that are free agents that probably won't be coming back, or, you just can't keep them all. As for the two you mentioned, I think the price tag for Dak will be interesting. I wouldn't go and get a new quarterback. I wouldn't do that. I think that there's so much in time invested here with Dak. I would keep him, hopefully for them at the right price. Amari, that's a little bit different, but remember, he was the first-round draft pick. They gave their first-round pick for him, so you really don't want to get in the business of just parting ways there. But how much is, I think both of those guys have actually, their price has gone down here in the last month or so because of how they play. Now, how far, we'll see, but I don't think that they're looking to set the market because of how they've played. I mean, I think if they both had played better, this team would be in the playoffs. And so I think there'll be a market for them, but they just have to come to the right price.
All right, and finally, we got to get a prediction out of you to see how this all shakes out in Week 17. Are the Cowboys getting into the playoffs?
Something tells me they are. Something tells me that they will, that they'll win the game. And, the Giants are playing. The Giants are going to have something to play for. They almost had the Eagles beat before. I think they got Daniel Jones in there now. I think they're going to go for it. They'll be at home. Philly's not that great. They're banged up right now, and to say that they're going to go win 4 straight games, they've already won 3, but to say that they're going to win 4, I just see them losing, and I see the Cowboys winning and scraping by. So I know some Cowboy fans say they don't want that to happen. I don't question how much of a real fan they would be to say that, but it's been a frustrating year, but my gut tells me that we'll be doing this next week.
All right, that'll do it. Thanks so much, and good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
All righty, time to wrap this sucker up. 1 o'clock is sneaking up on us. The entire crew is here, myself and Adam Kaufman. We have Steve Buchanan, Reed Fowler, Jeff Ulrich, Greg Ehrenberg, and the fantasy girl Rosalie Michaels join us from parts unknown.
All right, a lot coming at you here. It's time to make it rain. It's where you give us your DFS play that is absolutely going to make it rain cash for you today. So we'll see, what each of you have to say and let everyone else just pick on everybody else. Steve, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so, it's really hard to figure out who you like on this site because there's so many plays, players that can get rested or whatnot, but I'm going to roll with Julio Jones here. This is somebody who's absolutely decimated the Buccaneers during his career. He's played 15 games against them. 9 of those games have gone over 100 receiving yards in those games, and since Calvin Ridley has been out of the mix too as well, this is somebody who's gone over 300 yards on 23 receptions and 35 targets in that 2-game span. He's just absolutely been crushing opposing teams. Now he faces a really, really poor Tampa Bay secondary, so you have to love him in this spot here.
Yeah, Julio Jones, you're going to have to choose between him and Mike Thomas, right? I mean, that's the decision you have to make. Mike Thomas, maybe not in the best of spots, or over Julio Jones. If you look at Tampa Bay, really good against opposing wide receivers, really good against them earlier in the season. They've been a little bit better, but a little bit better of the absolute worst is still really bad against opposing wide receivers. It's just making that decision between Mike Thomas, a team that has to win in the Saints, and he's been absolutely fantastic.
I got something crazy for you. You can do both.
Ooh.
You can
So you're not going Christian McCaffrey then, right?
On a week like this where all these guys are sitting out, like someone like Duke Williams over in Buffalo Bills with all the guys out, he's someone you can fit in at the minimum price of $3K. You can fit all 3 of them in. Which care am I on? I don't know. All 3. Whatever care I'm on, all 3 guys.
Okay.
One of those.
Reed, your pick is coming in a moment. Let's go to Rosalie first. Rosalie, your Make It Rain pick for today's slate.
My Make It Rain pick is going to be somebody that's got something to play for. That's A.J. Brown. Tennessee's looking for their playoff spot here. And A.J. Brown has really come on in this end of the season. We're seeing a lot of great stuff between him and Tannehill. And I think I'm really excited to see what this Tennessee offense does next year. But A.J. Brown, even last week in week 16 against New Orleans, his receiving numbers were down last week, but he got that 49-yard touchdown run. He can do it all. He's now scored at least 14 PPR points in 4 of the past 5 games, including 25 points against these Houston Texans a few weeks ago. He had 8 catches for 114 yards and a touchdown on 13 targets. Tannehill's definitely going to be looking for him a lot today. We're going to see a lot of him, and it's going to be a monster day for A.J. Brown.
All right.
Greg, what do you think?
Jeff, Greg, any you want to argue with Rosalie at all? He's closing in on 1,000 yards. It's obviously a little narrative there to try and perform.
I don't really have any arguments with the pick. I mean, I think the only argument you can make is he just gets game flowed out of targeting because Houston's starting their backups and Derrick Henry just takes over the game. It's a fantastic matchup. He's obviously taken over as the #1 target in Tennessee, and he makes a good stacking target with Tannehill too. So really the only risk is, again, game flow, Derrick Henry taking this over. But Henry's a little bit banged up, so I think A.J. Brown is worth the risk personally.
Greg, how do you feel about A.J. Brown?
Or his life right now?
So, I mean, I'm a little bit of a coward this week. Just give me
Yeah, you
players
are.
that are
Yeah,
games
you
that
are.
matter. So this is a really tricky week just because there's so many teams that have nothing to play for. We don't know what playing time is going to look like. So the guys that I'm really looking to target are just going to be the guys on teams that need a win, and they're going to be playing their studs.
I will say, though, this is a week more than ever where, especially in tournaments, you are targeting these guys because if that's a sentiment for a lot of the people playing, I'm worried about them getting scripted out or whatnot. And we were talking about this before the show. If these guys are getting scripted out because they're up big, you've already gotten probably all the fantasy points you need to get to begin with. So don't be worried about things like that. Like, let's say Aaron Rodgers gets out of a game because, they're up big. That probably means he's got over 20 DraftKings fantasy points with some of the guys that he's hit already. So don't always take that into consideration as much. How's that? Good? You like that?
Reed, how about you?
Yeah, well said. I'm actually choosing one of Jeff's boys. No, not Tevin Coleman. No one on the Falcons here. The Falcons, as Jeff likes to put it. But it's going to be his favorite Bears receiver, Allen Robinson, the second here at $7,200. I know it's hard to trust Mitch. Yes, the second. Mitch Trubisky on anyone. Mitch Trubisky throwing the ball to anybody. But this guy's an elite receiver. He needs a quarterback. He needs to get a quarterback, not named Blake Bortles, not named Mitch Trubisky to throw him the ball. But again, even with the bad quarterback play, he's been playing extremely well. He gets targeted a bunch. And yes, this game doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things for either team. But again, Allen Robinson is a guy that always gets that elite level of targets. And if you want someone in that 7K range or that mid-K range and you don't necessarily want to pay out for the top guys and receiver, I mean, you should because there's a lot of value elsewhere, especially in the running back position. Allen Robinson is in a great spot. And we talked about it earlier, man. That Viking secondary is terrible.
Steve, I know you won't be taking his dad. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, definitely won't be taking his dad. This is Allen Robinson the second that we're talking about. But again, and I've kind of talked about this, I just don't like taking guys with Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah.
Like, that's the biggest problem here because he's one of the biggest wild cards on a week-to-week basis. A game that they're really not playing for anything here. So I get it. On paper, it's a great matchup for Robinson, but I think there's a lot of other ways that you can go on this slate aside from Robinson. But, he's in a good matchup.
All right, let's get the other folks' picks here. Let's go to Greg Ehrenberg first. Your pick today, Greg. Your Make It Rain pick.
Yeah, so I'm going with Ezekiel Elliott. Like I said earlier, I am a coward. And if we look at at this game, what it means for the Cowboys, it's a very important game, obviously. If they win and the Eagles lose, which I do think there is a possibility of it happening, the Cowboys make the playoffs, they end up winning the division. So I think they're going to really look to just pound the ball with Ezekiel Elliott. We know that the Redskins' defense is terrible. They got just totally gouged by Saquon Barkley last week. I think that Elliott could do a lot of the same this week. And that's probably what the Cowboys are going to look to do. And it's another thing also is that no matter how much the Cowboys get up by in this game, I think they're just going to keep putting their foot down on the pedal because I think they're going to try to win by as much as possible, especially with Garrett maybe trying to make some kind of a statement because his job's at risk.
I'm not sure that works for your hot take, Steve.
I mean, Greg obviously wasn't listening, and that's fine. He was probably being a coward somewhere else in his home, so we didn't get to listen to that segment. But the problem is that there's so many guys in the 7K range that I just much rather prefer. Nick Chubb's in a really good spot. Aaron Jones is in a really good spot. Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, this just can kind of go on and on here. So I don't mind paying up for Elliott, but I think you can save some salary with some of those other guys who are in good spots and probably won't be coming out of the game.
Should we get Jeff's pick?
Yeah, Jeff, I don't think we've heard from you
Yeah,
yet.
real
Go
quick
ahead.
too. We don't got much time.
Glad I had a turn.
Hurry up.
Well, I like most of these picks this week. I think most people are being
thanks.
rational. I like Zeke, especially for cash games. I'm going to go with Kenyan Drake, though, at 7,100. I think people are really overlooking the workload and production he's put in since he's been installed basically as a starter, playing over 75% of the snaps. And basically every game he's played for Arizona, averaging well over 6 yards per carry over the last 2 games, averaging well over 22 touches per game. And, I mean, look, the Rams might be a little bit of a tough opponent, but they're not going to play their starters the whole game. Cliff Kingsbury is playing his start. He's playing in Kyler Murray, even though he's not 100% here. I think Kenyan Drake has another big game. I think he gets another 25 touches. Ooh. And again, going up against backups, yeah, give me that. So 7,100, I think he's still a bargain. He's dominated the red zone touches. I think he's going to have another big game.
We've got a whole bunch of questions on social media. I'm sorry we didn't have time for most, if not all of them, but I'll get you one. Jeff, real quick, you have 10 seconds from Billy. What'd you think of the new Star Wars movie?
I haven't seen that junk yet. I was so disappointed by the last two. I'm out on Star Wars.
Nerds.
Wow. All right, well, you guys can all debate that yourselves. No, let's mute them because we got to get out of here. For Steve, for Reed, for Brendan, I'm Adam. The Sweat, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Bye-bye.